Sometimes, Hollywood stories are filled with drama that never made it to the screen. When it comes to Nancy Culp and Buddy Ebsen, their story is one that makes you lean in a little closer. Before the Beverly Hillbillies threw these two into the same spotlight, their lives were already filled with experiences that could easily fill entire books. However, what happened before that iconic show truly sets the stage for the tension that simmered between them later on. Let's start with Nancy. She wasn't your typical Hollywood star. Born in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, she was the only child of Robert and Marjorie Culp. Her father, a traveling salesman, was constantly on the move, while her mother juggled teaching and later became a school principal. Nancy grew up in a world shaped by structure and education, moving to Miami when she was still a child. By 1943, she had earned a degree in journalism, seemingly set for a life behind the pen rather than in front of the camera. However, Nancy's path was not a straightforward one. She worked for the Miami Beach Tropics, a local paper, where she had the opportunity to interview big names like Clark Gable and even royalty, such as the Duke and Duchess of Windsor. Not bad at all for someone just starting out. But then, World War II came calling. Without hesitation, Nancy left her studies to join the U.S. Naval Reserve. Picture her, young and determined, rising to the rank of lieutenant while serving her country. Now, let's turn the page to Buddy Ebsen. He couldn't have been more different from Nancy. Born and raised in Orlando, Florida, Buddy dreamed of dancing. Along with his sister Vilma, he hit the vaudeville circuit, where they were billed as the baby of stairs. Buddy had an easygoing charm that made him a hit with audiences. But life wasn't always easy. When Buddy arrived in New York with barely enough money to buy a sandwich, he knew he had to hustle if he was going to make it. The hustle paid off. Buddy soon landed roles in Broadway shows and ultimately found his way to Hollywood. He danced with Shirley Temple and was even tapped by Walt Disney to help animate Mickey Mouse's iconic movements. But the road wasn't without its bumps. Buddy's career hit a major snag when he was cast as the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz. The makeup used for the role, which contained aluminum dust, nearly killed him. After spending time in the hospital, the role was recast. Still, Buddy didn't give up. He continued to build his career, taking on roles in films and eventually landing a long-running role in television. By the time the 1950s rolled around, both Nancy and Buddy were making their marks in Hollywood, though in very different ways. Nancy was working her way through guest spots on popular TV shows, while Buddy was earning a reputation for playing warm, down-to-earth characters. The two didn't cross paths just yet, but the late 1950s brought their worlds together. They both found themselves working in television, though their career paths were distinct. Nancy was earning a name for herself as a hard-working actress with a sharp wit, while Buddy was establishing himself as a beloved, easygoing figure. The Beverly Hillbillies brought them together, albeit under very different circumstances. The show was a surprise hit, and Nancy and Buddy found themselves at the heart of it all. But off-screen, their contrasting personalities began to clash. While Buddy was known for his traditional old-fashioned views, Nancy was more intellectual and outspoken. This tension between them, rooted in their differing views of the world, simmered beneath the surface of the set, even as they maintained professionalism. Their relationship would go on to become one of the most talked-about dynamics on the show. Despite their differences, the success of the Beverly Hillbillies cannot be overstated. The show became a cultural phenomenon, and both Nancy and Buddy's performances were iconic. Yet behind the scenes, the tension between them highlighted the complexities of their personalities and personal views. The hustle paid off for Buddy. Broadway came calling, and soon Hollywood wasn't far behind. He landed roles in musicals, danced alongside Shirley Temple, and was even tapped by Walt Disney himself to help animate Mickey Mouse's iconic movements. However, things weren't always so magical. Buddy's career hit a major setback when he was cast as the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz, a role that sounded like a dream come true, but quickly turned nightmarish. The makeup used for the character contained aluminum dust, which nearly killed him. He ended up hospitalized, and the role was ultimately given to someone else. Following this, Buddy turned to other endeavors, including sailing and teaching naval officers during World War II. Despite his easygoing nature, life had certainly handed him his fair share of challenges. Now imagine Nancy and Buddy, two individuals from completely different worlds, each with their own quirks and ambitions. By the 1950s, Nancy had made her way to Hollywood. She'd gotten married, though the marriage didn't last, and secured a job in MGM's publicity department. It wasn't long before a director took notice of her and thought she had the perfect look for acting. Soon enough, Nancy was making appearances in small roles, playing everything from a maid on I Love Lucy to a drunken waitress on Maverick. While she wasn't yet a leading lady, she had a remarkable ability to steal the spotlight with her sharp wit and no-nonsense attitude. Meanwhile, Buddy was carving out his own space in the world of television. He became known for portraying folksy, down-to-earth characters that audiences couldn't help but love. By then, he had already built a reputation as a dependable, easygoing actor, someone people enjoyed working with. At least that's the way most people saw him. But here's where things get intriguing. By the late 1950s, Nancy and Buddy's paths started to cross in the television world. While they weren't working side by side just yet, it was a small town, and the entertainment industry was even smaller. Nancy was earning a reputation as a smart, hard-working actress, but she also had strong opinions and wasn't afraid to voice them. Buddy, on the other hand, was known for his more traditional views, perhaps even a bit old-fashioned and passionate in his beliefs. Their interactions, despite being somewhat distant at first, hinted at the underlying tension that would later define their relationship. While Buddy remained charming and laid back, Nancy's sharp intellect and independent nature set her apart. Their personalities, combined with their differing views on the world, foreshadowed the complex dynamic that would evolve as their careers progressed and their paths crossed more frequently. This budding tension would be a key element in their professional relationship and ultimately their legacy together in Hollywood. Before the Beverly Hillbillies came into the spotlight, both Nancy Culp and Buddy Ebsen were tirelessly pursuing various opportunities in Hollywood. Nancy appeared in a string of guest spots across popular TV shows. Though she didn't possess the typical Hollywood look, she embraced her unique style, confidently playing quirky and memorable characters. Her determination and talent allowed her to carve out a place for herself, even if she didn't fit the mold of a typical leading lady. Buddy, on the other hand, was bouncing between different genres, including westerns, dramas, and the occasional comedy. Fearless in taking on diverse roles, he also played darker characters, including villains on hit shows like Gunsmoke and Maverick. Though his range as an actor was evident, neither Nancy nor Buddy had yet secured that defining role that would propel them into superstardom. By the early 1960s, both had made significant strides in Hollywood, but their careers had yet to reach the peak they were destined for. That all changed with the Beverly Hillbillies. When the show debuted on television, it was a sensation. It quickly captivated millions of viewers as the simple, backwoods Clampett family found themselves thrust into the glitzy high society world of Beverly Hills. The show was a perfect blend of humor, charm, and delightful absurdity, drawing viewers in week after week. At the heart of this beloved series were Nancy Culp and Buddy Ebsen. When the creators began casting for the Beverly Hillbillies, they needed someone who could embody Jane Hathaway, the efficient and intelligent bird-watching secretary to Mr. Drysdale, the Clampett's banker. Nancy proved to be the ideal choice, as her distinctive style and sharp wit made her an excellent fit for the role. Meanwhile, Buddy Ebsen, by this point a well-known face in the industry, brought his easygoing charm to the character of Jed Clampett. Jed, the patriarch of the Clampett family, was portrayed as a man with little formal education, but a great deal of common sense. He was the heart and soul of the family, and Buddy's portrayal of him was perfect. His warmth and sincere demeanor made Jed relatable and endearing, and viewers trusted and admired his character. His role as the rock-solid center of the Clampett family made him a beloved figure, with his iconic catchphrase, "Well, doggies," becoming ingrained in American pop culture. While Nancy and Buddy's professional lives aligned as they became central figures on the Beverly Hillbillies, their paths to success were quite different. Both had worked hard to establish themselves in Hollywood before landing their respective roles, but it was the series that truly made them household names. Despite their contrasting backgrounds, their chemistry on screen as Miss Jane Hathaway and Jed Clampett made them the heart of the show. As Nancy brought humor and intellect to her role as the no-nonsense secretary, Buddy's Jed kept the family grounded amid the chaos of Beverly Hills. Together, they created a dynamic that was both endearing and iconic. In the end, the Beverly Hillbillies was more than just a sitcom. It was a cultural phenomenon that captured the hearts of viewers across the nation. And for Nancy Culp and Buddy Ebsen, the show not only defined their careers, but solidified their places in television history. While their personal and professional lives may have been marked by differing personalities and views, their on-screen presence was a perfect match, bringing joy to millions. When the Beverly Hillbillies premiered, it became an instant sensation. Audiences were captivated by the charming fish-out-of-water story of a family from the Ozarks who strike oil and move into a lavish Beverly Hills mansion. The Clampetts weren't just funny. They were relatable. Their simple, rural ways clashed with the extravagance of Beverly Hills, creating a series of hilarious misunderstandings. At the heart of the chaos was Nancy Culp as Miss Jane Hathaway. Miss Jane wasn't your typical secretary. She was smart, loyal, and often the voice of reason. When her boss, Mr. Drysdale, got a bit too greedy, Miss Jane would stand firm, always prioritizing the well-being of the Clampetts, especially Jed's well-meaning but somewhat clueless nephew, Jethro. If you've ever watched the show, you'll know that Miss Jane had a soft spot for Jethro, which added a touch of humor to her character. Nancy played her with a perfect balance of wit and warmth, making Miss Jane an unforgettable part of the series. For her performance, Nancy even earned an Emmy nomination, solidifying her place as a key player in the show. Buddy Ebsen's portrayal of Jed Clampett was equally iconic. As the patriarch of the family, Jed was the glue that held the Clampetts together. While Granny stirred up trouble, Ellie Mae charmed everyone with her sweet demeanor, and Jethro bumbled through one wild scheme after another. Jed remained the calm, steady presence in the midst of the chaos. His iconic catchphrase, "Well, doggies," became ingrained in American pop culture, and his portrayal of Jed made him a beloved figure among viewers. Jed's simplicity, wisdom, and calmness in the face of adversity made him an endearing character and a true anchor for the Clampett family. However, behind the scenes, things were a bit more complicated. While Nancy and Buddy's characters had a warm, friendly relationship on screen, their real-life dynamic was much more strained. The tension between them didn't arise from differences in their acting styles or professionalism. Rather, it stemmed from deeper personal differences. Their personalities and, most notably, their political views clashed in ways that were hard to overlook. Buddy, known for his politically conservative views, was not shy about sharing his opinions. In contrast, Nancy was more liberal in her political beliefs. This wasn't just a difference of opinion. It was a fundamental divide in how they viewed the world. Their contrasting ideologies created tension on set, though both managed to maintain professionalism throughout their time together on the Beverly Hillbillies. Despite their differences, Nancy and Buddy's performances remained a highlight of the show. The undeniable chemistry between Miss Jane and Jed helped elevate the Beverly Hillbillies to iconic status. Yet, the undercurrent of tension between the two actors added a layer of complexity to the show's behind-the-scenes story. While audiences saw only the friendly relationship between their characters, those who worked closely with Nancy and Buddy knew there was more beneath the surface. In the end, their performances spoke louder than their personal differences. Their dedication to their roles and their ability to bring their characters to life with humor and heart made the Beverly Hillbillies a beloved series that continues to be remembered fondly by fans today. Despite the underlying tension, Nancy Culp and Buddy Ebsen's contributions to the show remain timeless, making them both integral parts of television history. Imagine working alongside someone every day who stands for everything you don't believe in. That's exactly what Nancy and Buddy faced on the Beverly Hillbillies. According to other cast members, their disagreements often turned into heated debates that could last for weeks. It wasn't the typical light-hearted teasing or friendly banter you might expect. These were serious discussions, sometimes escalating into full-blown conflicts. Despite this tension, both actors remained professional on set. After all, they had no choice. The show was an enormous success, drawing in millions of viewers every week. For a time, it was the #1 TV show, and its popularity didn't easily fade. Audiences loved the Clampetts and their antics, and even though Nancy and Buddy might have clashed in real life, they perfectly brought their characters to life. Nancy's portrayal of Miss Jane Hathaway quickly became one of the show's most beloved characters. She wasn't flashy or over the top, but rather, she was the relatable, grounded presence that viewers could easily connect with. Miss Jane was the type of person who worked tirelessly, always tried to do the right thing, and somehow always found herself stuck in the middle of everyone else's messes. While her humorous crush on Jethro was often played for laughs, there was a tenderness to it that added depth to her character. On the other hand, Buddy's portrayal of Jed Clampett was the steady backbone of the show. Whether he was trying to navigate the complexities of Beverly Hills society or helping Granny concoct another batch of moonshine, Jed was always calm, collected, and wise. It's no wonder that viewers tuned in week after week to see what ridiculous situation the Clampetts would find themselves in next. However, despite all the show's success, the tension between Nancy and Buddy never truly dissipated. In fact, some say that the friction between them only grew as the series progressed. It wasn't just a clash of political ideologies, it was a deeper, more fundamental clash of personalities. Nancy, with her sharp intellect and no-nonsense attitude, didn't shy away from a fight. She was passionate about her views and wasn't afraid to voice them. Buddy, on the other hand, while charming, had a stubborn streak that clashed with Nancy's directness. When their opposing personalities collided, sparks inevitably flew. The fact that the show kept them in such close quarters only intensified the friction. As Miss Jane and Jed, they shared many scenes together, and while their on-screen personas were warm and friendly, there was often an undercurrent of frustration beneath the surface. Those who were paying attention could sense the tension between the two actors. Donna Douglas, who played Ellie Mae, once revealed that Nancy and Buddy would argue for weeks over their differing views. Can you imagine how tense the set must have been? Despite their disagreements, both Nancy and Buddy understood the importance of professionalism, and they did their best to keep their differences from affecting the show. But even the best efforts couldn't hide the undeniable tension that simmered just beneath the surface. In the end, the success of the Beverly Hillbillies was not only a testament to the chemistry between the cast members, but also to their ability to set aside personal conflicts for the sake of their work. Nancy and Buddy's professionalism kept the show running smoothly, despite the underlying tension that marked their relationship off-screen. Their iconic portrayals of Miss Jane and Jed, as well as the moments of quiet camaraderie between their characters, are part of what made the Beverly Hillbillies so memorable to generations of fans. Despite the tension between them, both Nancy and Buddy were consummate professionals, never allowing their personal disagreements to affect the success of the Beverly Hillbillies. It wasn't easy, though. Maintaining civility while working so closely with someone whose views and personality clashed with your own takes considerable effort. Yet, they managed to make it work, and their on-screen chemistry kept the show running smoothly, leaving the audience oblivious to the tension that simmered just beneath the surface. By the time the Beverly Hillbillies ended its run, it had become a cultural touchstone, continuing to be discussed even decades later. Its influence can still be seen in countless other shows that followed, proving the lasting power of its unique blend of comedy and charm. For Nancy and Buddy, however, the end of the show didn't mark the end of their complicated relationship. Their differences didn't simply vanish once the cameras stopped rolling. Instead, they continued to shape how they interacted, even after the Beverly Hillbillies had come to an end. In the years that followed, Nancy decided to embark on a completely new path: politics. In 1984, years after the show's conclusion, Nancy ran for a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives. At 62, she was aware that some people might question her ability to transition from acting to politics. Still, she was determined to prove them wrong, believing that she could offer something valuable to the political table. After all, as she pointed out, Ronald Reagan had made the leap from Hollywood to the White House. So why couldn't she? Nancy chose to run as a Democrat in Pennsylvania's 9th Congressional District, a solidly Republican area. Her opponent, Bud Schuster, had already served 6 terms, and the race was expected to be an uphill battle from the start. But Nancy was not one to shy away from a challenge. She threw herself into her campaign, connecting with voters, sharing her ideas, and offering a vision for change. Despite knowing the odds were against her, she fought tirelessly, giving everything she had to the campaign. However, Nancy never expected that her former co-star Buddy Ebsen would become involved in the race, and not in the way she had hoped. Buddy, who had no connection to Pennsylvania or the election, chose to intervene by recording a radio ad for Nancy's opponent. In the ad, Buddy publicly criticized Nancy, calling her too liberal and accusing her of using her celebrity status to influence voters. This wasn't just a difference of opinion, it felt deeply personal. Nancy was blindsided by Buddy's actions, and the betrayal hit her harder than any of their previous disagreements. She didn't hold back when speaking about it afterward, sharing her frustration and hurt. In one interview, she said, "He had no business getting involved. He should have stayed out of it." She also pointed out that, although they had never gotten along, she would never have done something like that to him. The hurt in her voice was palpable, even years after the fact. For Nancy, this was not merely a political disagreement. It was a painful rupture that left a lasting mark on their relationship. The radio ad did little to help Nancy's campaign, and in fact, it may have hurt her chances. She lost the election by a significant margin, with her opponent securing more than 66% of the vote. While Nancy didn't blame Buddy entirely for her defeat, she could not ignore the sting of his actions. After the election, she took some time to step back, leaving Pennsylvania to clear her head and process the situation. It wasn't until later that she returned to the area, ready to move on from the bitter experience. As for Buddy, he appeared to have no regrets at the time. He stood by his opinions and felt that his actions were justified. But over the years, Buddy began to express some regret over his involvement in the campaign. Toward the end of his life, he admitted that he wished things had played out differently and that their feud hadn't escalated in such a public manner. Unfortunately, by then, it was too late to fully mend the rift between them. After the campaign, the two actors had very little contact. Their professional paths had already diverged, and their personal differences seemed irreparable. Nancy, for her part, found new meaning in teaching. She became an artist in residence at Juniata College, a small liberal arts school in rural Pennsylvania, where she shared her passion for acting with students and found solace away from the spotlight. Nancy's legacy as an educator, a woman of conviction, and an actress who captured the hearts of millions lives on. Her contributions to both Hollywood and education are remembered fondly, despite the political rift with Buddy. Meanwhile, Buddy, whose career continued with roles in television and film, maintained a public persona that remained beloved by fans. However, both actors, despite their differences, left behind a lasting impact on the entertainment industry. The ad did little to help Nancy's campaign. In fact, it likely harmed it. She lost the election by a substantial margin, with her opponent securing more than 66% of the vote. Despite the loss, Nancy made it clear that she didn't blame Buddy for her defeat, but the sting of his actions lingered. She chose to leave Pennsylvania for a while, taking time to clear her mind before returning, once she had processed everything that had unfolded. At the time, Buddy appeared unshaken by his involvement. He remained steadfast in his belief in the validity of his statements about Nancy and defended his actions. However, as the years went on, even he began to feel some remorse. Toward the end of his life, Buddy expressed regret for both the radio ad and how their feud had escalated. Unfortunately, by that point, it was too late for them to fully reconcile and mend their fractured relationship. Following the campaign, Nancy and Buddy had little to no contact, and any reconciliation between them was brief. For Nancy, a new chapter awaited. She found peace and fulfillment in teaching, an endeavor that allowed her to impart her wisdom and experience to others. She took on a position as an artist in residence at Juniata College, a small liberal arts institution nestled in the serene countryside of Pennsylvania. There, she taught acting and had a profound impact on many students, guiding them through their own creative journeys. Her time at Juniata marked a much-needed break from the Hollywood spotlight and the complexities of politics. Nancy found a community that truly valued her, not just for her previous fame, but for the warmth and insight she brought to her work. Her students often spoke fondly of her, not only admiring her for her career in Hollywood, but also for her unwavering commitment to nurturing others. In the classroom, Nancy brought both humor and heart to her lessons, fostering an environment where students felt encouraged and supported. She believed that the stage could be a place for everyone, regardless of their background, and that belief resonated with those who were fortunate enough to learn from her. Though Nancy's Hollywood career and political aspirations had been marked by ups and downs, her time at Juniata College was a chance for her to find inner peace and a new sense of purpose. The calm and supportive community she cultivated at the school became an essential part of her legacy, showcasing the full depth of her character beyond the spotlight. In this quieter chapter of her life, Nancy made a lasting impact on the students she mentored, leaving behind a legacy not only as an actress, but as a compassionate and dedicated educator. It's easy to picture Nancy Culp smiling as she shared stories from her days on the Beverly Hillbillies, often sprinkling in advice about life on and off the stage. Even after leaving the limelight, she continued her love for the craft of acting by performing in local theater productions and occasionally making guest appearances on television. While her focus shifted toward teaching, she never fully stepped away from acting. It was clear that her passion for storytelling remained strong, and her later work reflected her deep appreciation for the transformative power of the arts. But acting was not the only thing that defined Nancy. She also embraced a rich, vibrant life beyond the stage. Whether she was connecting with students, friends, or neighbors, Nancy had a rare ability to forge lasting relationships, always making the most of her time with others. However, in 1990, Nancy faced a daunting new challenge when she was diagnosed with cancer. Despite the difficult diagnosis, her determination never wavered. She continued to teach and remain active within her community for as long as her health allowed. Those who knew her described her as both brave and strong, qualities that had been evident throughout her life. Sadly, Nancy passed away in 1991, leaving behind a legacy that extended far beyond her portrayal of Miss Jane Hathaway. Her story was one of resilience, creativity, and an unwavering refusal to be defined by any single chapter of her life. She had lived life on her terms, and her legacy as an educator and a mentor would continue to inspire long after her passing. While Nancy had carved out a fulfilling life in her later years, Buddy Ebsen, too, took a different path as he grew older. Although his workload in the entertainment industry slowed down, Buddy continued to act, finding roles in movies and television shows. One of his more notable later roles was as the star of the detective series Barnaby Jones, a popular program that kept him in the public eye for several years. However, despite the diverse roles he played, audiences continued to associate him with his most iconic character, Jed Clampett. The character's down-home charm, coupled with his iconic catchphrase, "Well, doggies," became larger than life. Outwardly, Buddy embraced this association. He welcomed the love fans had for Jed and took pride in the character he brought to life. But privately, this typecasting was not always easy to handle. After all, Buddy had spent years building a career full of varied roles, only to be remembered for one. Despite these challenges, he handled the situation with grace. He frequently appeared at events and interviews, often reminiscing about his time on the Beverly Hillbillies, and was always happy to talk about the people and experiences that shaped his career. Later in life, Buddy wrote a memoir in which he shared anecdotes from his Hollywood career, giving readers a glimpse into both his professional experiences and personal stories, including the infamous feud with Nancy,